Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, a show for women entrepreneurs who want to build, grow, and lead successful businesses and high-performing teams. I'm your host, Lindsay White, leadership coach and people strategy expert, here to bring you unplugged conversations with a variety of amazing guests who share expert advice and real actionable people strategies for your growing business. Ready to get unplugged? Let's jump in. Awesome. Welcome back to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I have my friend Staci Millard with me today, and she's just awesome. We recorded for her podcast, I don't know, like a week ago? We had the best conversation. So this is like continuation thereof. Staci's an amazing mom of two, a multi-passionate entrepreneur. She's an investor, she's a board member. As I said, she's a podcast host and she's a philanthropist. And after working with thousands of entrepreneurs, as well as in her own seven-figure scale and business that she scaled, she believes in three non-negotiables for every successful business: making money, heart-led impact, and having a great life. Because we want to, be in our businesses and love them, and be in our lives and love that too. And so I love that approach. This is part of why we get along like a house on fire. So glad you're here, Staci. I love it.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm so excited. Every time we talk, it's like there's so many epic pieces that I've got my own notebook out and I'm writing it all down.
I love it. So many epic pieces is the truth. Um, I know we've talked about this before, but I'm not even sure I know the whole story. So tell us how you became a female founder. What's your journey been?
Yeah, I was a girl from the prairies. I grew up with two parents who worked for Fortune 500 and government, and um, ultimately I grew up in like the Richie Rich era. Do you remember that movie?
Yep.
Yeah, and my parents didn't have a lot of ownership over our financial situation, over their lives and how much time we got to spend together, really anything, and the impact that they could have. I watched them be very unsatisfied with how much impact they had from their work. And I learned from that game of life that I should go get a good job, the one that pays 100 grand a year. So I became an accountant. I loved accounting. I love numbers. I love the patterns. And accounting was a really good, safe job. And I went to work public practice. And eventually, I wanted my own taste of what all those small businesses that I was working with for somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted that control and the ownership, and I wanted to make money and I wanted to have impact. And I was working for somebody that I just didn't feel like I had any of that. So I took a leap of faith and opened my own accounting practice. And, maybe this is like the first tip for listeners, but when you really believe in what you do and you can talk to people about it and make it simple for them. Like that's the key, making it simple. At least for service providers, that was like my key to massive success because I started talking to people who needed to know about their accounting and taxes. We didn't gatekeep, we talked in simple terms, and we just made it easy. And it was massively successful through literally all through referrals. We didn't have to work hard for that because we just did a really great job. And it came naturally to me to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit about how things got started. I just wanted that, like, I wanted Mount Rushmore with my face on it. I don't know.
I love it. No, but you know what? I love that point. Like if you're really passionate about it and you can really make it simple for people, take the complicated out. That's what people are really looking for. Make my life easier, right? I think that we all want that, don't we?
But so we work with a lot of scale ups.
Mm.
I say often, no shame to startups. Like, man, for myself, like, it's almost like the teenager, like they don't want to listen. I was like that too. So I remember the advice that I
Yeah.
didn't want to take. So
Yeah.
you have to go through that stage. But we work a lot with scale ups. But if I could go back, it's like, guys, like it's the simple stuff. It's just paying attention to the customer or the client. And we don't we when we start out, we're like, "Oh, this business, like I'm going to do it differently." And there's a lot of I statements in it and not a lot of we statements or about you statements, like how I can help you. And I'm noticing that in the industry right now. I see people who became contractors or tried to open service based businesses and product-based businesses, and they're focused on themselves and their craft and what they want to do and not on the customer. And I'm watching a lot of them go back to work and jobs because it doesn't convert. And the ones who are willing to like put in the effort and really just deliver something amazing to people, it's like they're having massive success.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I'm seeing the same thing.
Hmm.
I think it really is about, being real clear on, and I just recorded a solo podcast about this, but like being real clear on that mission and vision, right? And what are you doing on this planet, and what are you trying to create, and how's it making the world better? Like if you
But
can nail that.
yeah, so like how do you go though, like talk to somebody who's new and you're like, or newer, and you're like, but you have to believe it. Like I
Yeah,
don't think that they understand it. Like mission and vision is like, oh, we run this because this is what somebody told me. We put in this business plan, or
exactly.
we put this on the website. They need to know
Yeah.
this. But it's like, no, you gotta live that.
Yeah, I take it one step further. I think you got to feel it. Like I
Yeah.
think that's a come from the gut moment. You've got to really feel that what you do is really meant to change the world. And you're going to
Yeah.
do it one client interaction at a time, whatever you're delivering, right?
Yeah. Okay, but also one step further. I had this conversation this week. It can't just be what you say either.
Mm.
So sometimes we have a dream or a desire on our heart. So we have that vision and we're like, oh, wouldn't the world be a good place
Yeah.
if? And we have that. But then if you actually got really honest about the steps that you're taking every day to get you there, they're not in the right direction.
Yeah.
And our intention, I say this often, is like our intention doesn't matter. It's our actions that do. So you could have this great intention of, being focused when you're at work. You could have a great intention of treating your team really well. So none of those things make any difference unless, sure, feel it, but then you have to do something with it.
No, I think that's a great yes and, because if your behavior doesn't match up with your intention, then you're right. You can have all the but what are they Mary Poppins with the pie crust promises, right? They're made to be broken. It's the same idea. You have pie crust intentions. If
Mhm.
you don't actually do the things, if you don't actually bring the intention to life, yeah, it's not really worth the paper it's written on. And no, you're never going to get there because your feet are
Yeah.
headed in the wrong direction. I think that's actually critical. And you're right. For a lot of people that are starting their business, it feels like you should do that. That's a should. But in all reality, if you're gonna say it, you better be prepared to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I think is missing from like most scale ups is that like reflection time. So whether it's like reflecting on your financials or reflecting on how you're showing up as a leader, like how do you feel in business? It's like we're missing that like test and track sort of mentality. And the businesses that have the fastest success are looking at what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and they're like amplifying it, right? They cut out what's going wrong or they make changes. They're doubling down on what's going right, and they grow really quickly because they're very like intentional about it. But most of us don't, like I'd say like 95% of us don't have that unicorn. They call them unicorns when they grow that quick. We don't have that same unicorn effect. And that I think is the difference maker, is we just haven't given it enough reflection time. Even like, okay, social media, you look at that and like everybody who grows big on social media tells you what? Look at your stats, look at what resonated to people, like A/B test things,
Yeah.
what words resonated. And it's all about reflecting, like taking an actual look. But how many of us actually go to a post? Like, can you tell me you've went to a post and we're like, how did this perform? Was it as expected? What was received from it? Probably not. So we don't grow massive social followings. And that's okay. Like maybe we don't want that either. I don't know if you do, but like I'm like, I don't know if I want to be an Instagram star, but
No, no.
but but we could have success, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
many areas where it's like that's what we should really be looking at.
No, I think you're right. I mean, a lot of the clients that I work with, that is actually part of the problem, is that they are so head down in their business. They're actually overly invested in the tactical execution, is maybe the way I would put it, in
Hmm.
getting, in layman's terms, getting shit done, right?
Mhm.
They're so invested in that space that you're right. They don't pause. They don't pull themselves back out to the 50,000-foot view and get, sort of a strategic assessment of what is happening, right?
Yeah.
Or and even, even to be more self-reflective, how am I impacting that? Right?
Mhm.
Like, how am I showing up? Too busy with the day-to-day get the work done pieces to have any space for that. And you're right. I think it hamstrings growth in small businesses. I really do.
Yeah, and I mean the reality is like very few businesses are designed so that you build $1 million business that provides you, or maybe it doesn't even have to be seven figures, but very few businesses are made so that you have a great income, that you have impact, and you have a great life, right? A lot of people have made great jobs for themselves, but they're working constantly, answering customer emails while they're on holidays. Like you can't do it on your own if you want to have some sort of balance. So we have to work with people. And if we're in it doing it, how do you have even enough sense on what to delegate or what to ask for help with?
Yeah, I see it all the time, right?
Mhm.
Because that's part of the work that I do is that strategic approach to resourcing talent in your business, right?
Mhm.
And but what I see very often is that's anxiety inducing. And
Yeah.
so as a business owner, when I am feeling anxious about my business, what do? I double down on the things I do good, right?
Mhm.
Because that feels great. I feel confident in doing that thing. That's how I built the business to get to maybe that multiple six-figure space. And now I'm thinking about maybe moving to that seven-figure space, but that's scary. that's,
Mhm.
that's terrifying. So what do? I double down on the things that make me feel good, that I know I can be successful at, instead of, to your point, stepping back, doing some self-reflection, thinking strategically about how I want to move this forward, and then actually not just leaning in, but stepping into the discomfort, that space of unknowing, managing that risk carefully. Like nobody's saying go and, throw $10,000 at something stupid, but you have to have that space, to your point, to self-reflect and to actually be able to think strategically, put the work down so that you
Mhm.
can get out of your head for a minute. That to me is critical.
I even like, sometimes you're like, I'm further down the path and I want to like wave at everybody and be like, hey guys, like it actually gets even better. For personal reasons, we had a couple of like traumatic events that happened while I was growing my business. There was a couple of things that like led to me not being as present. And those
Mhm.
were my wake up call of like, I actually don't want to be, oh my gosh, somebody notable mentioned this the other day. It was like a genius with 1,000 helpers. And I was like, I don't want to be the genius with 1,000 helpers. I want this business to have impact. I want to make money doing it, but I don't want to be like I don't want to be the bottleneck. I don't want to be the linchpin. I don't
No,
want to be what holds it all together. I want it to be cohesive and like really a team environment. And so I started backing out of a lot of
yeah,
things just because I did not want to be responsible. I was like, I cannot be solely responsible for this. And when
no,
I made that change, that is what I'm like, guys, it's so possible when you just like you stop, or
yes.
ladies, like all of us, it's so freaking possible when you stop like just doing the things that you're good at, when you
Yeah.
can, move beyond anxiety and realize, okay, this is an emotion, but I control it. It doesn't control me. And like, and you, it's just like that is where business really flourishes.
I love that. I don't know if I've ever heard that, a genius with a
Isn't
thousand
it
help.
amazing analogy? I'm like, there's so many businesses where, and I've talked to some friends about this. I had a friend, she actually got to the point she had about like 15 or 16 staff members. And that is how I would describe her business. And I told her, I'm like, it's a little bit like an ego death because you
Mm.
realize that you're like very dispensable in the business. Like if everybody else is doing things, you're like, oh, where do I fit in? And then eventually you come to terms with the fact that like they're all together and doing these things because of the vision that you created and because of the standards that you hold and because of the culture that you pour your heart into and all these other things. But there's like a level of ego death of like, well, where the heck do I belong if I'm not the one doing it?
You know what? That is so true, right? Like,
Mhm.
what do I do if I don't do that? That's again, that's where I started the business. That's the product or the service. And if I don't actually do much of that anymore, what do I do?
Mhm.
It's like when you're a mom and your kids leave the house and you're like, well, being a mom was a big part of my identity and now I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're putting way too much of yourself and your own consciousness in the business. Actually, you're right. Now you're not the chief everything officer, you're the chief executive officer. You hold the
Mhm.
vision, you champion the culture, you create and set the direction, and then you enroll everybody in that. That's your job. And it's actually about thinking at the next level. So I love that. Like, it reminds me, I just watched the Minions movie on the weekend. And so
Yeah.
that's right. Like, you don't need minions. You need
Yeah.
really exceptional professionals to execute on the things that they're really good at. That's what drives your business plan. And then you need to get the hell out of the way. There's
Yeah.
nothing worse. There's nothing worse than being a bottleneck.
But I think it's kind of interesting because no matter what business you start, like you really did start as a practitioner of that trade.
Yes.
Like I don't care if it's a clothing store and you liked the clothing or you're an accountant like me and you started doing the accounting. So now all of a sudden you're like, but hold on a minute, like I didn't ask for this completely different job. All I'm doing is managing people and zero accounting.
Yeah. I just, I think one of the important things when I'm talking with and you tell me if this is the same. When I'm talking with a business owner that is actually thinking in that strategic way about, okay, I'm seeing the business growth, I'm planning for the growth, maybe I'm already experiencing some of the growth. Now what? Right? How do I need to resource this thing with the right people to accelerate? One of the most important things is actually finding out, like, what is the work that you really want to do? Whether that's similar work or maybe it's changed. But I was working with a client not that long ago. And when we were talking about this, she was like, she got all emotional, like, really started to feel quite passionately about, I still want to be able to connect with my clients. I got into this business because I love helping the clients. Okay, if that's important to you, how do we shift that? So you still find that meaning, but it looks
Hmm.
different because you're not executing the day-to-day work anymore. What does that look like? Well, for her, it really looked like she loves to go out in the community and do workshops and do speaking and do okay. Then let's figure out how we get you doing more of that and get you out of the way of the super smart people you hired to do all the work. Doesn't mean you can't take a client phone call. Doesn't mean you can't show up to the like, right? But
Yeah.
let's figure out what that looks like so that you can still feel connected to that. Because you're right. I think that's a fear. Like if I don't do that, if I'm not a coach anymore, well, what
Hmm.
am I doing with my big bad self?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I,
like that.
I think also like the hardest change for leaders isn't hiring team and like delegating a task to the team. I think the biggest leap that's like so hard to overcome is when you put a level of management between yourself and the team.
Yes.
Because now all of a sudden like you're very disconnected from the work or the customers or the clients and it's like now really your whole role is managing people, right? And it's like that's where you've got to find a way to like give back. And I think
Mhm.
that's also where people start a second business. They're like, okay, that was fun. Now what?
You know what? I think you're right sometimes, or they reinvest that time in something that they've been neglecting, right?
Mhm,
So, is it that project that you always wanted to work on? I see lots of business owners that invest that time back into the community.
mhm,
I wanted to sit on a board, right? I wanted to be a philanthropist. I got some money now. There's other interests that I want to bring my talent and expertise, time and money to. But yeah, being a leader of leaders is a whole different ballgame, right?
Yeah.
That is a completely different level of leadership. Now, I don't think it means that you can disconnect from everyone else in the business. You still have an important role to play in how they do work and how they feel connected to the culture. But yeah, you now when you have a layer of management, you're leading other leaders, and man, that means you better step up on your leadership. Like you have to completely reevaluate how you're leading at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and it all starts at the top. Like this again, like I'm an accountant, right? I grew and scaled and sold an accounting firm. I'm growing another accounting firm because of how passionate I am about how
Yeah.
numbers help people. And what I can tell you is like that, yeah, like that's non-negotiable.
It is. It
Hmm.
has to be. I actually saw, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I saw this is, a competitor of mine that's talking about sort of the most annoying thing in her business as she grew it was, working with her team and how she's designed this whole thing around manage your team in 1 hour a month. I'd
Oh,
love, yeah, okay. So your reaction was very similar to mine.
okay. Your team's gonna do whatever they want. Like, hopefully you hired great people. You're paying them enough or found whatever makes them tick that they're gonna stay because it's not gonna be your vision.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
do you think like you raise kids and you're like, I'm just gonna see you once a month. I'm gonna have massive impact on how you grow up. No.
Oh, okay. So I thank you for letting me throw that out there, but that was sort of my instant reaction was like a pretty significant level of revulsion, I guess is the way I would frame it. Like, yeah, you can build a really great team and you can design some programs and processes that allow you to lead a little bit more hands off. But I mean, you've grown and scaled a seven-figure business. You're growing another one. Would you ever want to lead your team in 1 hour?
No, and you know what, Lindsay? This just sounds to me like somebody who learned a little bit of marketing. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
um this is my biggest pet peeve with like, business on Instagram now is
Yeah.
that there's a we're all encouraged as business owners or as coaches or whatever is to like learn marketing. And the first thing you learn in marketing is you talk to the pain points of the people you're trying to serve. So I mean, what leader is not overwhelmed? You're
Mhm.
like, you're telling me I can lead my team well and they're going to do everything if I just invested an hour. Like, oh my gosh, thank you for the break because I'm everything to this business and I just need a break and you're telling me that. And then the reality is like this is another service provider who gave you a too good to be true promise, who's going to let you down and you're going to be disappointed. And even worse, you've probably burnt some bridges with your team in the meantime when you're super hands
Uh,
off and they're like, this person doesn't care about the business. Why should I? Now, I have to be clear. So, like at seven figures, I had, I think, 13 weeks holidays. I do not pick up my phone on holidays,
you.
but I am in the office. I'm connecting with my team when I'm back. I'm talking to them about what their pain points are. We're moving major projects forward. I was not involved in the accounting, but it wasn't 1 hour a month, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of space that's created when you're using other people's time to amplify the
Yes.
business. Like, you can have a lot of success, but there's still a level of effort that's required to like create and maintain culture. Like
Yes.
using the words you want to make, like you want to be used. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for saying
Okay.
that because I think you're right. For a lot of business owners, as we scale our business and we start to add complement to our teams, it gets more and more complicated and it does take up more and more time. Now, I happen to believe that if you're recruiting and hiring and onboarding the right people in the right way, that cuts down on some of that. And a lot
Mhm.
of business owners use the pulse test, which means if they have a pulse, they're hired. That is not that is otherwise known as the breath test. Like if they fog the mirror, then they're high. Don't do that. Don't if you're gonna do that, just call me. I'll help you. But like you have to hire the right people with the right skills and the right fit. Like that's number one. That cuts down on your time and attention. You have the
Mhm.
right processes, right? So that people know what to do and they can execute in the right way. But even thinking about 1 hour a week as a leader, well, I guess it depends on how many people you have. But like whether that isn't even a realistic goal that you would only connect with people for 60 minutes out of the 40 hours they're going to work for you in a week. That's bonkers,
So my thought is like I would go back to like the map. Like how often are you checking the map to make sure you're going in the right direction,
right?
right? So you can have some like really effective people below you or some like really effective leaders even, middle level management below you. But how often are you checking the map?
Mhm.
And I mean, like EO, so entrepreneur organization, like their like EOS system, like they have weekly meetings, right? But what do you do to prep for the meeting? What have you done to like make sure that, what's being said is actually happening? Like how often are you walking around talking to people in the business or connecting with people that maybe aren't your direct reports to know if what you're getting is true? Like I can't see 1 hour a week. I can't do it.
Yeah. And isn't that the truth? Like this isn't just about having meetings and working on projects and setting strategy. This is about genuine connection. You've carefully curated a team of experts, people that you genuinely think are going to impact your business. Why would you ignore them? Why wouldn't you want to know more about them and what they're doing and thinking and feeling and who they are as a human?
So I think this is really interesting. I think this goes back to a conversation though about like how stressed we are as a
Yeah,
society and how burnt out we are. So I see people wanting that desire of like, I am exhausted. Like, tell me the least I can do.
yeah,
But one of the things that you said is like, this is about connection. I'm going to be honest. Like when we come down to like the numbers and sustainability, we all know the failure rates of small businesses. When we're talking about who's profitable, who's sustainable, the businesses that create connection with their team, with their customers, like in general, we are craving connection. I don't care how connected we are on Instagram, it's not the same. So we are craving connection, and you cannot create connection on like it's just not enough on an hour a week.
yeah. Can you say that again? Because I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I think as a society, we are craving connection. There's so many ways that we evident like that's evidenced in what people are buying.
Yeah,
All of the big marketers talk about, how do you make people feel connected to you as a brand? That's
yeah,
what sells nowadays.
yeah.
And so whether it's for our team or our customers, we have to be connection focused as leaders,
Mhm.
and that cannot be done in an hour a week.
No. And it is the thing that drives success. I love that, and that's why I had you repeat that because I think that that's really important, and you are data driven. I know you are. I mean, as an accountant,
Yeah.
you're all about the numbers. You're all about, the reporting and understanding, are you on the right track? But like this is so key is that it is all about the connection and ultimately the culture that creates the value in our organizations.
So the fun thing though that I find about the numbers is that for me, when we're looking at them, like we're finding evidence of what we've done. Like, is our team operating efficiently? And then it kind of comes back to connection. Or, we're looking at the investments that we make. And so, as a brand, it's like, are you investing and connecting with your customers the right way? And then we see the results, or we can see the investment that's made. It's like, are we getting the results we want? And then we change our behaviors. Like, it's not about like, did you hit this profit this month or not?
Right.
It's like it's about all the other things that truly make up a business, and there's like hidden indicators there in your
Uh,
financial numbers. But like gosh, like we can't lose the heart of businesses. That's what small like, small business is all about, is like you're not just a number to somebody anymore.
Well, you said it at the beginning. You watched your parents work in, highly successful professions, but not really have connection and ownership of what they did or when they did it. And that is why I think people come to work for a small business. They want impact. They want to see the value their work creates. They
Hmm.
want to connect to a vision and actually contribute to a mission. That's why people choose not to work in big corporations. They don't get to see the impact of their work every day. In a small
Yeah.
business or a team of 20, I get to see the difference that I make at the end of every afternoon.
Yeah.
That's cool, right?
Yeah.
That
Well,
drives.
It's okay. So my dad told me this story the other day, and I was like, I must have sensed it as a child, but he told me that. So he worked on the railway, he worked for one of the railways, and he actually came up with this idea and helped the railway negotiate with the government, and it made them, I'm going to argue, billions of dollars.
Wow.
My dad fell and hurt his knee, and he was like forcefully retired at 50. Like, billions of dollars of savings, like, and you mean nothing to us, like, guys, like, we owe it to our businesses. In comparison, my girls are out with me when I, am in the community with all these people, and they're like, oh, what's happening here? It's like, oh, well, this client of mine, like, is doing a food bank drive. They're
Yeah.
helping the homeless people. Like, you're like, look, there's so much value. Or like, who's sponsoring the sports teams, or
Yeah.
even just like the people who get to work for those businesses, those smaller businesses that are loving their life. Like, that lights me up to do that kind of work.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that your girls are seeing that. I know my kids are super proud of me. In particular, I mean, I got 2 boys and 2 girls. I know my girls are proud of me, and I know the guys really appreciate that. Like, my mom's an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
They take pride in that. But what's the old saying that your obituary, that your job will be posted before your obituary is in the paper? Like, that really, that's
Ouch.
dating us a little bit. Newspapers are kind of a dead thing, but that's really the truth, right?
Yeah.
The big organizations, you really genuinely are a number. As much as they talk a good game, the reality is it's all about driving quarterly shareholder value. And the rest of it doesn't really, like, comes in a sad second place.
Hmm.
It is our small business. I mean, they first and foremost, they drive our economy. Secondly, women start and actually follow through on more small businesses than men. We repay our debts. Like, when investors like you invest in a female small business, we pay our debts back
Yeah.
more often than not. Like, I can't even remember the stat, but women, we don't walk away. We make it work because
Yeah.
we're used to making it work. And that's why I do what I do, is because women-led businesses make a difference in our communities, right? They are the ones that
Mhm.
sponsor the sports team, or they are the ones that contribute to the community food drive or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be effective in your business, not just working as part, like a cog in the wheel, but working on your business and being a strategic leader from a variety of angles. I
You
think
know,
that's crucial.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
You know what I'm thinking about is like when you talk about mission, vision, and values, each one of those has like multiple components to it,
Mhm.
right? So like your mission might be pretty simple, but like the vision, if you actually, think about it, like there's multiple aspects to it, and values, you have multiple values. So how in 1 hour do you give enough time to each one of those values to have your business replicate it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You said it right from the beginning. These pieces deserve intention. They deserve time and space. And if we're not willing to give that time and space to the people that actually generate the work, create all the value around,
Hmm.
what do these values mean for you? How do these values drive the behaviors, particularly when you're talking to our clients?
Hmm.
How do you fit into this vision? How does the work you're doing today make that reality? And how do you tie into this mission? Right? Where do you fit into what we're trying to create in our community and in our world? Yeah, that's the stuff that motivates people to deliver.
Yeah. Can I hijack this? Because like I'm thinking my brain is like now stuck on this. Is like I think that this 1 hour a week is, I think it's attracting people for a reason. And I think, like, let's talk about this. Like, why would it be attractive? Like, clearly leaders are burnt out
Yes.
with their home life and their business life.
Yep.
And I'm thinking back because I've been there and I'm like, well, what did I do to get out of that stage? So I have some advice. One, your home life doesn't have to be as complicated as you make it. Like we actually have a business around this that we're like trying to create change in families because we've put a lot of pressures on ourselves that like really do not need to exist. And I think simplicity actually makes your entire family life easier. But one is like looking at your personal life and what are all the things that we're saying we need to do or trying to do that we think we're failing at, and simplify. in our business, it's like getting clear on the math of like, when can I hire? What should I hire? Right? Where can I offload and either save myself time so I can do higher income producing tasks? Where
Yes.
can I hire somebody who drives some revenue to the business? What are we doing that we like that is just not necessary? Like, this is an embarrassing story, but I am very much the type of person who's like inspired. Like, I'm not a marketer, but if I see somebody like, I'm like, see you talking about leadership, I'm like, oh, I would say this about numbers. So I screenshot this. And at one point, it got to the point where I had like, 100 screenshots. And then I had to like move them and categorize them into a folder. And then I realized like, oh, it's been 2 months and I've done nothing with this folder. So I moved them somewhere else. And if I, it is, I couldn't even tell you how many hours I spent on this because I would probably just like want to throw up. But it's like, how many things are we doing like that in our business that's not moving the needle,
I love
right?
it.
Like, let's get honest with ourselves. And I think those three things would really make a difference for these people who are like, tell me how to manage in 1 hour a week, a month. But you're like, no, that's not the problem. There's, you're ignoring what truly is,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Boundaries, how often you're checking your phone. Like, some of the things that people talk about often is just like, some time blocking,
Yeah.
um, deep work. We're not conditioned to that as a society anymore. So it's like, if we got back to some of those practices, then we're not entertaining like, oh, let's manage in 1 hour a month.
I love it. I love, first of all, did not anticipate the true confession today. So thank you for that. That
All
was
of them.
fantastic. No, but I think your point is well taken. Where are the things that are sucking on our time? Right? It's not that your intentions were wrong, right?
No.
Your intentions were really, really good. How could you do that differently, shift that? If you have a social media person, it's send them the screenshot with a voice note. I saw this. This is what I'm thinking. You're the expert. You make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Again, where can we get? We're out of our lane. We're out of
Yeah.
our lane. How do we get back? The other thing that I would add to your true confession is that so many of us have a pleaser saboteur.
Hmm.
We have to say yes to everything. We run around hustling for our self worth, as Brene Brown says. We are trying to make everybody happy all the time, keep all of the plates spinning on the sticks. And inevitably, what happens is the things that we feel are important fall to the wayside because we are so busy running around making everybody else happy so they'll like us. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that.
Okay. But with team, this is like what's coming up for me is that sometimes what we think we have to do, I don't know if you went through this, but I went through this stage where I thought I needed to be Google. And I'm like, I need the foosball table and some beanbag chairs, and we need like,
Yeah, no.
staff outings every month. And it was like over giving, people pleasing,
Yes,
like, please like
yes,
me.
yes.
But I shifted that to like, no, 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 no. I am here for this mission. You've either signed on or not. And now I see myself as a coach. And that shifted everything in business. And for a coach, for me, like, I played basketball growing up.
Huh,
And it was like the coach sees the whole court, right? The coach can see who's, maybe wanting to give up, but they actually have a little bit left in them. It's the one who's like, oh, I'm having a bad day.
huh.
You can see the people that don't fit the team. Maybe they're not playing as team players. Like, you get to see everything. So I decided in business, I didn't need, it wasn't, I had to let go of my need to be liked. And I
Yes.
saw myself as a coach. And so, like, often I wanted to have great camaraderie with my team. I wanted them to like me and respect me, but enough in that those moments where I was like, "Hey, you didn't do a great job on this. And I know that you usually put in a lot more effort. What happened here?" That they weren't gonna, I was not fearful of like, "Oh my God, they're not gonna like me for calling out
Right?
this crappy work." Right? Because I was the coach. I was like, I can call them out on when they're
Yes.
not performing.
Yes. No, I love
Mhm.
that. And you're right. A lot of business owners, I hear from my own network, but also from my clients, they really are deeply uncomfortable with those conversations. And so, and a lot of that is a reflection of some of the things they've experienced in their own corporate world,
Mhm.
right? They had a shitty boss who was really toxic, and
Mhm.
that boss used feedback as a weapon to punish. And so they've come out, They've started their own business and they've swung the pendulum the opposite. So they're not a servant leader, they're a doormat, right?
Mhm.
And suddenly
Yeah.
your team is kind of walking all over you. Again, to your point, you're not going to fix that overnight, and you're sure not going to fix that in 1 hour a week. Those
Yeah.
conversations require space and intention, and you have to buckle up as a leader. Like you've got to be ready to
Mhm.
have those crunchy conversations that you just talked about. And they change the game, to use your metaphor.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting because there are people in my world who have what I'll call like solo businesses, right? They've created a business for themselves. They get to basically they've created a job for themselves and they get to operate on their own terms, which to them is better than having a job job.
Yeah.
And I think like that is fantastic. But if you have stepped into the arena to build a business and you're using other people's time to do that, like you have no business in doing that if you're not willing to admit
Yes.
that leadership and learning leadership, because zero people are taught leadership. It doesn't, in grade 4
No.
when you get to be the leader of the class for the day and like somehow the teacher decide that, like nobody taught you how to lead. They just named it to you. And so you cannot call yourself a leader without actually learning what it takes to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's not the same skill set as what your business delivers or what any of the people on your team do.
No, no, you're absolutely right. And we do not start these businesses to be a leader. We
No,
start
we
them
don't.
because we're passionate about a product or a service. But you're right. If you want to scale your business, and you know that that requires you to have team, there is an inflection point where it is time for you to scale up too. Like you can't have a high performing team if you're not willing to be a high performing leader. The two things are like have to happen consecutively.
And high performing doesn't just mean that you work hard. Like that's not the same thing.
Right? Yes. Yeah. It doesn't mean more hours.
Yeah.
Performing actually means effectiveness and execution and striving for excellence, not perfection, excellence,
Yeah.
right? But if you're not willing to put in your time and effort to be an excellent leader, how are you ever going to build an excellent team? You're
I
not.
think I think people need to hear this a few times though. Like I think I need it too because if you're like, you go back to 25-year-old Staci and you're like, "Hey, so you just spent 7 years of night school to become an accountant and you're going to open this accounting firm, right? I'm going to tell you you're going to do zero accounting and you're actually going to have to invest a lot of time and energy in like learning this new skill set." I'd be like, "Yeah, right. Like I'm good.
Get out of
I'm
town.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm just learning all these other things." And especially like going into business, you're like, I'm just learning all these other things, marketing and my friggin' website. Like what's UX? Like, all these things. And you're like, I maybe you have to be the accountant or the bookkeeper. And you're like, I just don't know, I don't know any of this. So you're like leadership too, but it's a
Yeah.
reality.
The learning curve is straight up as a business owner. There's absolutely, hey, I've had my experience with that too. I mean, leadership and people and culture is what I do for a living. Yeah, I've had to learn about the bookkeeping. I've had to learn about the marketing and the social media. Not that I ever wanted to, but here we are. Um,
Hmm.
but it is if you want your business to grow, you have to combine the technical skill set of your profession with the technical skill set and the deep desire to lead. The two things have to go together, or your business isn't going to grow the way you want it to. Clearly, you've done that very effectively because you've already grown and scaled and sold one business, and you're on your way with the next business, and you help other businesses.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think you're right. People need to hear this message. I see really effective business owners that have really great businesses that can't even skip to the next level and they become that bottleneck. They actually hamstring the growth.
Hmm.
And it makes me sad because it's not easy work, but it's not necessarily unpleasant work. And the growth personally and professionally is astonishing in a relatively short period of time.
I think the sad part isn't necessarily that they became the bottleneck because I think that like businesses are ebb and flow and grow and change and like you'll become a bottleneck and then you solve the problem. But I think the ones that do make me sad are the ones that like stop there and then they
Yes.
wonder why, right? And it's like if there was like one thing that I'm like, I wish I asked myself sooner every time there was a problem is like, what is my hand in this? Because usually I'm like looking for outside sources. I'm like, who's not doing their job? And it's like, oh, it's me
Wait a minute.
eventually. But
Oh, shit.
yeah, yeah,
Me. Oh, it's the Taylor Swift. Hi, I'm the problem. I think that should be my
yeah,
theme.
yeah.
But no, if you take anything away, if you're listening, you take anything away from this particular episode, it is that you need to self-reflect. How are
Mhm.
you showing up in your business? Are you hurting or are you helping? To put it bluntly.
Yeah.
And what's the work that you need to do in order to move your business forward? Is it your leadership? Do you need some people strategy work? Do you need to re-examine your business plan and actually get really upfront and personal with some of that data and some of that number stuff and the information? Like, what do you need to do? Because ultimately, the people in your business aren't going to do it for you. You got to lead the charge on that.
Mhm.
And yeah, you need to step up and get real, I think is sort of the final analysis, right?
Yeah. I like if I think if anybody took anything from any of this rambling, really, all the thoughts that are in the head, it's just that, you know, one, an understanding that like business is so different than what you expect. And
Sure.
so have some compassion for yourself and like probably all the roles, especially as women, like all the roles that we're holding in
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and have so much compassion. Um, and then, yeah, where are the problems? But I think instead of feeling like there's more to be done, is like there's always also less to be done somewhere.
Yeah.
So, like let's make sure we're using our energy and our resources in the right places.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I feel like we could go down a rabbit hole on all these things today. Thank you. This was a wide-ranging conversation, but I think it was really an impactful exploration of some of these important issues that, yeah, we as our businesses grow and change and iterate, they pop up over and over again. It's the same
Mm.
issue, just might look a little bit different as your business changes. So thank you for going on this journey with me and having this conversation today.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. I feel so lucky that I get to connect with such amazing female entrepreneurs. And if you enjoyed today's session, would you do me a big favor? Would you hit subscribe and give this episode a 5-star review? I'd also love it if you would share with your friends. We've got a goal here at the Female Founder Unplugged podcast to impact 1,000 female founders. And with your help, we can really amplify the message. Thanks again for being a part of the show. And don't forget to connect with me at highvoltageleadership.ca. We'll see you next week.